Welcome to Positive Filter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, people of the world. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Filter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest. I'm joined by Randall, a.k.a. Randy McNeely, a.k.a. Captain Kindman. I like when people have aliases. He doesn't know, but I'm the unofficial mayor of Mason. And so I have that, and I guess I'm the Prince of Positivity. So the Prince of Positivity is meeting Captain Kindman. And
awesome.
we connected online through the kindness efforts. I was a guest on their show, I believe the Kindness Factor, which I'll put in the show notes. But we're just all about kindness, and there's a lot of synergy and projects and things he's doing on his end to elevate kindness. And I was like, I have to have you on Positive Filter to share your impact and what you're doing in kindness. But Randy, give the listeners a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name is Randy McNeely, a.k.a. Captain Kindman, and I'm a big kindness advocate, if you couldn't tell from what Phil already said. But I'm a father of five. My background is actually in information security. I did that for a long time. I'm now a recovering cybersecurity officer. And and the reality is my goal in life is to put out positive messaging that comes through kindness in order to bring out the best in people. And that's the beautiful thing about kindness. When we give kindness away and show people that we value and appreciate them, help them to feel loved, it does bring out the best, and it creates that wonderful ripple effect that we all know as that pay it forward phenomena. So that's who I am.
I go back to the orange story. I guess I love it. We're gonna go dive in with the Captain Kindman origin story because I feel like it's a superhero story. Where did that happen? Did you get bit by a radioactive kind person, or how'd that happen?
Well, interestingly, I really jumped into kindness in 2019. I wrote a book called The Kindness Giver's Formula, and I was known as the Kindness Giver. And in the last year, and I went by that, and I still go by that. But in the last year, I created a T-shirt shop called the Kindness Hero Shop, and I had the opportunity to go this past year to Palermo, Italy, to speak at the 11th General Assembly of the World Kindness Movement. And I had worn this red cape and a shirt that said Kindness Superhero on a podcast or something. And people said, you should wear that when you speak at the World Kindness Movement. So I did. And they gave me, oh, you're Captain Kindman. That's your, they gave me the idea to call myself Captain Kindman, and I embraced it. So here I am.
I love it. Man of the people. How did you, tell us about the origin? How'd you get back to, writing this book? Where did that come from? And really diving into kindness.
Well, I was in the information security world for a long time. And when you're an information security officer, I dealt with HIPAA security and HIPAA privacy, and as well as other types of information security, which are all, things that we need to have in order to protect patient health information and help protect our personal information when we're going on the internet or wherever we're going, with the network. But all of that is enforced with rules of compliance and stuff like that. And while it's needed, nobody likes to be forced to do anything. And when I would come around, I always try to be a nice guy and do a good job and treat people right. And so, but you're the kind of guy when you're doing information security, you're the guy that everybody loves to hate because nobody wants to deal with the reports and all the other stuff that you have to do there. So I enjoyed what I did. I got paid really well to do it. And, I got to travel all over the country, but there were all kinds of things happening in the country that really bothered me. There were shootings going on everywhere. You got the mass shootings that happened back in the summer of 2019 in El Paso, Texas, and in California. And then there was the previous year, previous fall in Nevada, where the guy from the hotel room, killed so many people. And that, and just the dialogue that you could see, in social media and other things like that, that was, pushing anger and divisiveness and all those things really got to me. It really bothered me. And I thought, I know I'm just one man, but there has to be an antidote to this. And what can we do to start trying to inspire people to look for other solutions to the divisiveness and to be able to transcend our differences? And kindness was the way to do that. Kindness is huge, because really what kindness is the delivery mechanism for love. It's the delivery mechanism for love. Every time I extend the hand of kindness toward Phil Wilkerson, or toward somebody else, toward Carolina Copani, or toward anybody on the street, or whoever I meet, every time I extend that hand of kindness, what I'm doing is extending the hand of love. And there isn't a person on this planet that doesn't need to be loved. And the beautiful thing is when people feel valued and appreciated, as I said earlier, when people start to feel like you care about them and that you love them and that you value them, that you see them as someone of value, they can't help but want to reciprocate that and want to push it forward. So 2019, after seeing all this going on, I decided, I just need to write my book. I wrote the book, The Kindness Giver's Formula. It's a simple, easy 4-step formula at the time. It's 5 steps now. I just added 1 step, but it's a simple formula for ingraining the daily habit of giving kindness. And, I got traction, and people started to talk to me and ask me about it, and bring me on podcasts and other things like that. And so that's really what I decided to step into kindness advocacy full time, and speaking about kindness in various locations and doing that. So that's really how I got started.
No, so I think about back in when I started really thinking about diving into well-being and all that. Came from a place similar to yours, where maybe it was not seeing the world, it was more intrinsic. Like, I was going through stuff and I wanted to learn like how to be happier. So I took back in 2018 or 19, I took one of those Coursera edX courses. No, it was edX, The Science of Happiness by UC Berkeley, the Greater Good Science Center. Which talked about the science and all that happiness. As you were developing the book, where were some of the resources that you were gathering to develop your formula to really, like, people, when they think of kindness, they think of the foo-foo, mushy, huggy. But when I I learned about the science of happiness, I learned it was like when someone's appreciated, they actually work harder, right? When you practice gratitude every day, you build up your resilience. It was like real, like they were talking about real, like, neurological changes and things like that. What was some of the resources that you were using to get when you were writing your book, to like understand, like, I'm writing about kindness, but in a sense of like, this is useful and not just, sunshine and butterflies?
But, it's interesting that you should ask that question. And this may sound a little naive on my part, but I didn't actually, I referred to a little bit of science, but I referred more to the purpose of the book was to inspire people to do their own experiments, their own studies, and find out for themselves how kindness works. I gave a simple 5-step the 4-step formula. I talked about, and I gave examples about how you could use it. And I, at the end of each chapter, I asked, what did you learn from this? Ask people to consider, what did you learn from this chapter? How is it applicable to you? And what can you do? What are you going to do about it? What can you do, going forward? But then I included, at the end, I included a bunch of stories, actual stories of people who had, had transformative experiences with kindness, to let people see, this is what happens when you put it into practice. But I basically invited my readers, go out and do your own studies, get your own experience. And I taught them the principles. I gave them an invitation, and I made them a promise. I promised them that if you'll go out and do these things, you'll find out for yourself, because I know that these things work. And here's how I know. I've put them into practice, and I've seen the effects, the impact that comes because of giving kindness away to people. And so there's some science, a little bit of science in there. And I honestly, at this point, I don't remember all the resources that I referred to, but most of it was just inviting people to find it, to do their own experiment, their own study, their own kind of study. Jump in with both feet and do it for yourself and find out and see the benefits that come. And, the benefits that come not only to you, because when we're giving kindness away, and you know this as well as I do, Philip, because you're a living example of when you treat people right, when you show people that, I think you're all right. Philip Wilkerson is a good man. I love having the chance to talk to that guy because he just makes me smile when I'm around him and all these things. When you make people feel that way, two things happen. Or when you help people feel that way, two things happen. They're feeling good and you feel good. You feel better because I'm giving some light, some love, some caring away. And the more we do that, the better it is for our own personal well-being. When we can see the light come on in somebody else's eyes because we've been willing to extend the hand of kindness, extend friendship or love and caring toward them, what does that do to us inside? It brings those warm, good, positive feelings. And so we feel better about ourselves. And so it's a reciprocating cycle. It's a beautiful thing. It helps us with our mental health, and it actually impacts. There is science that shows, studies that have shown that kindness actually impacts your physical health. And the more they've done studies where people have done like one act of kindness a day for several weeks or whatever, and they've taken measurements beforehand and measurements afterwards to show how it impacted them physically, mentally, emotionally, all those things. So it's a beautiful thing that you can do every day and not have to rely on studies outside. You can just do the studies yourself.
Yeah, I like to call I met and interviewed the actual director of the UC Berkeley Greater Good Kind Center, and I call him the mad scientist of happiness, meaning like he was a mad scientist because he did experiments, right?
Yeah.
One of the experiments was, he has like these questions, like ask these connection questions, and people like they're real tactical, like real ways and activities. What was some of the real practical activities that you challenge your listeners to try out?
Well, the first thing, every day, if you want to be able to start your day off right, I get up and say, look in the mirror and say, I'm going to be a kindness giver today. I'm going to look for opportunities to give kindness away. And because I am a kindness giver, and I'm going to do that. And then take just a few minutes each day and think of who you're going to be with, where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, and plan potential opportunities to give kindness away in those situations. I say potential because, nothing ever goes 100% the way you plan, right? You can plan best laid plans of mice and men. You can plan something out. It doesn't always go that way, but plan potential opportunities to give kindness in those situations. And then go out into your day with your kindness antennas up. When I say that, intentionally looking for opportunities to give kindness. People talk about random acts of kindness, and I'm not knocking that, but the fact is, when we choose to give kindness, when we give kindness away, we choose to. There's nothing random about it. It's a choice. I choose to give kindness to somebody, but there are all kinds of random opportunities to give kindness that present themselves. Yeah. So when if you're intentionally looking for those opportunities, it's amazing what happens. You can go through the same routine and realize, my gosh, I had 20 opportunities to give kindness that have been here this whole time, and I wasn't noticing them because I wasn't paying attention. So look for and act on as many opportunities to give kindness away as reasonably possible. You can't do everything, but you can do what you can. And then the third or fourth step is to invite and encourage other people to do the same thing. And the reality is, when people see how happy you are because of the kindness you're giving away, you cannot help but kindness and happiness are inextricably connected. You can't separate the two of them. You cannot be kind and not feel happier. And you cannot be happy if you're not being kind. It's that you can't separate them. The people are going to notice when you're trying to be kind, and they may ask you, why are you so cheerful, or why are you so happy? I've had that happen multiple times. I get on a plane and I've got a big smile on my face. And so I remember a guy sitting in first class on this plane. He's like, man, you got a great smile. Why are you smiling so much? I said, this is because I try to give kindness away. And I said, I bet I can turn around and make everybody here smile. And I said, I just smiled there. See, I just smiled at everybody. Everybody, the automatic response is smiling. So you invite and encourage other people to do the same thing, because kindness is contagious. And the final thing is, take the time at the end of each day and just reflect for a few minutes and think about experiences that you had, any experiences you had with kindness. Why is that important? One thing is, every time we record something, it ingrains it more in our head. Yeah. It just does. But the other thing about it is when we record those experiences, how many human beings have down days? Everybody should be raising their hands, because we all do, right? Well, you can go back on those down days and reread those experiences and actually recreate the same feelings of oxytocin, and have the same release of oxytocin and endorphins and all the good things that come out, with serotonin, and get dopamine, get your dose of happiness, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. You can have that experience again. So it's a great thing to have those recorded, and for posterity. You can carry on generational good feelings of kindness just by sharing positive, uplifting stories about the transformative impact it's had.
That's really powerful. I mean, there's so many ways I could go from there, because I was thinking like the first part was just the affirmation of I am this, and then you go throughout the day with that identity, right? I always think about it like thoughts become actions, actions become habits, habits over time become being. Yeah. So if you wake up every day and do it over and over again, it becomes who you are. You are kind, right? Because it's part of your being. So that's one thing that kind of branched out from that. Another one that branched out from that was that the intentionality every day, right? Like if you look at your schedule, you're like, okay, I got these meetings. At least start every meeting with how you doing, and I'm so happy to be here. Like you can think of like ahead of time, like plan kindness. I like that idea. Like, where are spaces throughout the day? Like, if I'm going to go to the cleaners, make sure I open the door for somebody. But like, and then like, what can I do ahead of time? And then I love the antenna part, because you're like, I thought about it like, there's always open time. I could have opened that door for somebody. I could have picked up that thing. They dropped something. I picked it up. Like it happens multiple times. And then the last thing that really reiterated that I really held on to what you said was like the reflection piece. Like every day I have a gratitude journal and I write what I'm grateful for. Yeah. But now that I think about it, most of the things I'm grateful for was ingrained with someone, like being nice or positive experience or some form of kindness was in that space. It wasn't like had to be an act. It could just be like had a nice meal with someone where there was kindness there. So I love the reflection piece. So there's some great things. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Okay.
What about those that say people that are kind are pushovers, or those that are kind, don't, stand up for wrong, and, they let everything slide? What would you say to someone like that? Now, mind you, I'm just, I'm playing. I know I don't believe that, but what would you say to someone that has challenged your kindness mindset?
Well, it's interesting. I appreciate that, because that question comes up a lot. The thing of it is, you have to stop and ask people, let me ask you, okay, I'm going to throw a question back at you. How many times in your life have you needed to build a relationship with somebody in order to be able to accomplish what you need to accomplish? And they'll be, well, like, I have to do that all the time. I says, if you treat people like a jerk, if you act like a jerk and you treat people like a jerk, how well does that go toward building those relationships? And they're like, well, it doesn't. You can't create the relationships. That's the power of kindness. You treat people, you act toward people in ways that show them that you value and appreciate them. That is the foundation of building strong relationships. And in business and in life, if we want to succeed, no man is an island, as the old statement goes. No man is an island. We can't do anything alone. We need to build strong relationships. We need each other. And the only way I know of, and I defy anyone to tell me to produce something different, The only way I know of building strong, powerful, trusting relationships is by treating people with kindness and love and caring, and showing them that you value them and appreciate them, and you see them as someone who deserves to be valued and appreciated. So if that's weakness, then I'll take that weakness every day, because it's going to help me make the strongest relationships I can make.
Now, and this is like, if this is, I agree with that 100%. I also think about, what would you say to someone that says, okay, I am good at building strong relationships, and I don't treat people like jerk, but I've also been taken advantage of. What would you say to someone like that? Like, my kindness is not always reciprocated, or I've been taken advantage of for my kindness. What would you say to that person?
So, that's going to happen sometimes. People are going to try to take up you, and they're going to think you're a pushover. The fact is, you have to have it's not being unkind to stand up for yourself. The beautiful thing, in fact, let me step back and say, there's a little song I learned as a little boy going to Sunday school, primary for my church, says, I want to be kind to everyone, for that is right, you see. So I say to myself, remember this, kindness begins with me. Kindness has to begin with us, begin with ourselves. And so, excuse me, it is not unkind to stand up for yourself and to say, I appreciate what you're saying and I respect you, but I'm not going to allow you to walk all over me, to treat me like I'm a pushover. This is the way I see things, and I respect your opinion, and you have the right to see things how you do, but I also have the right to see things how I do, and and I would appreciate it if you would give me the respect. I'll extend respect towards you if you'd give me the respect of allowing me to have my own opinions and see things as I do as well. Something like that. It just depends. It's going to all depend on the situation, right?
No, I was nodding my head, because I think that's what, we've talked about. Like, when we do a presentation about kindness and leadership, we have a slide called myths, and then we have the myth breakers. And I'll send that to you, Randy, because one of those things is like, no, it actually is an act of kindness to stand up to bullying, right? Like,
it is.
Like, you stand up, you say, hey, I don't want other people to be treated like that. And that might be, that might be confrontational, but also is not like, you're saying it from a sense of like, we treat people with civility, right? Or like, one thing was not being a pushover, like holding people accountable sets a standard. You just don't have to do it in a sense of condescension. Like, for instance, one of the things we always use, like, if someone shows up late all the time, you're not going to say, I'm tired of you showing up late, and reprimand them. You say things like, hey, what's going on? I noticed that you're showing up late. Is there anything I could do to help? And then you find out sometimes from a place of curiosity, oh, that person might have transportation issues, right? And like, but you're still holding them to it, but you're not at that same question. You're not like saying it's okay to be late. You're still holding them to a standard. You're just trying to work with people. So like, you can be assertive or, hold people accountable still with a kind tone or a respectful tone. And so we always discuss that. Like, we debunk these myths all the time about a separation between kindness and like being too nice.
Well, and I love the way you said that, because it's a kindness and being too nice is a myth. I mean, you can, and interestingly, you made me think of, I just listening to a speech by, one of the leaders from my church the other day, actually talking about Martin Luther King. He's talking about Martin Luther King and his last talk that he gave the day before he was assassinated. He says, I made it to the top of the mountain, or something like that. I made it to the top of the mountain. And our church leader brought up the fact that Martin Luther King often taught the parable of the Good Samaritan in his speeches. And he talked about how when the priest and the Levite came along, they looked at the man who had been injured and said, what's going to happen to me if I stop and help this guy? They were thinking about, what's going to happen to me if I stop and help this guy? He said, the difference between them and the Samaritan was, the Samaritan said, what's going to happen to this man if I don't stop to help him? He was outward focused. He was thinking about, how I can, how he can make a difference. And that's the when we, when people who are actually kind and care, they think of in terms of what's going to happen to Phil if I am not willing to help him? What might be the consequences of my not taking the time to do that? And so they end up making stronger relationships, better connections, because they're looking outward. They've got an outward focus instead of thinking about me. So I can't hear you, Phil. Lost you. You're okay now.
Yeah. Sorry. Wi-Fi. But a lot of people think of Martin Luther King, they romanticize him but he was also very advocate, about, social justice, but also like economic equality and all these things. And like, he was very vocal about these things.
He was a kind man that had the courage to stand up for himself.
Yeah. And like, he was in confrontational situations, right? Getting, dogs sick, police on him. So it wasn't like you could be kind and avoidant of conflict, right? Like you could be kind and go into conflict and hard situations, right? It's not avoidant of that. And so I think about when people think kindness, also avoidant of conflict or avoidant of, and it's not that. It's more so like how you act in those situations, or tone, or the ability to bring people together. But it's not conflict avoidant, right? Like you're gonna if you're kind, you can be a kind person in a storm, like
you
the world going crazy around you, right? And it's not like avoiding of that. So I've always thought about that, like, almost like that agency, like no matter what's going around you, you still have agency on how you treat people, even in the storm of turbulent times. Exactly. Now, my next question, go ahead if you have a point.
I just say one something that goes right along with that is, conflict is inevitable, right? I mean, human beings being who we are, conflict is inevitable, but contention is a choice. We can choose to not be contentious. Anyway, great. What's your next question?
Yeah, my next question is more so like, when did you think about scaling up? I know you started a nonprofit, you connected with other people. When did the kindness movement, kind of start to grow a little bit for you?
Well, the same year in 2019, I wrote my book. I also formed a partnership with three wonderful two other wonderful, the three of us, two wonderful men. Dr. Ilya Gorgors, who's also known as the Happiness Doctor, and Elgin Cahill, who's an amazing film director, created a company called the Kindness Factor International, and we started working on a human interest series it was then called the Kindness Hunters, because we were looking for stories to share. We're hunting down kindness stories to share, and to help, to bring transformative stories to the screen. And then we changed to the Kindness Factor International. And we've been working for a few years to get we've had opportunities to show some of our episodes, but we're still working to get that on the air. But that's when, I started to try to scale up a little bit, get our TV show on the air. And then we, really things started to take off more, actually, just a little over a year ago. And we connected with Kindness Worldwide, which is an amazing organization founded by Kevin Smith and driven by one simple act of kindness that happened to him. Somebody returned a lost wallet to him. And he just, that little act, that simple act has become this what's starting to be a big global movement. Now he's got kindness ambassadors in multiple countries. He and I and Dr. Ilya and Elgin were all in Palermo at the World Kindness Movement last year, speaking and filming. And we're working on a documentary directly related to kindness. And so I guess, I've been working to scale up more since 2019, but it's really taken off more in the last year. I mean, I've spoken, speaking in Palermo, Italy was a big deal. Having the opportunity to go there and speak to people from all over the world and talk about the powerful and transformative, or the inspirational and transformative power of kindness. And so it's been scaling up since 2019, but more really expanding in the last year.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the ambassador program? If someone's interested in being an ambassador, how does that work?
You know, I can absolutely tell you about that. You know, Kevin Smith is looking for ambassadors of kindness in cities all over the country. What he did is when he started Kindness Worldwide, he created what called Kindness Week Worldwide, and it happens the same week as World Kindness Day, which is a World Kindness Movement Day. But then Kindness Week Worldwide is 8 days, in which he invited communities. It started out in York, Pennsylvania, but then it's expanded to other communities to have a week of activities specifically in the community to promote kindness. And kindness ambassadors are people just that are in those communities, people that stepped up and said, you know, I'd really like to promote kindness in my community. How can I help? And I can connect you with Kevin Smith. And if you're interested in being a kindness ambassador for Kindness Worldwide, reach out to me. I would love to connect you with Kevin Smith and you know, let things go from there. He's got ambassadors all over the place. So
did they get like a cool, what did they get like a membership card? Remember kindness member 10567?
You know,
how does it work?
It's a newer program, so they will get a membership card or a certificate or something like that. Kevin's still working on the process for doing that. So it's like I said, he formed the company in November of 2023, and over the last year, since then, man, that guy is a workaholic. I mean, not a workaholic, but he works hard. He's a full-time financial planner, and then he does the Kindness Worldwide stuff on the side, and
scaling up.
It's scaling. I mean, he's got ambassadors in Nigeria, Australia, Greece, Italy. I'm trying to think of Kenya, I believe, and then, you know, multiple cities in the United States. And so, yeah, it's growing, and he's got a bunch of different initiatives that are going on. Kindness Worldwide and we're doing, you know, the Kindness Factor International, we're doing all the filming for them. You know, when we go into the cities that they're going into, the places they go, we're providing the filming to capture the amazing impact that their kindness is having.
Now, one of the things is, can you tell us, like, how was the international conference in Italy? How does that come about? Was it the first annual? What kind of program is that?
It was actually the 11th General Assembly of the World Kindness Movement. The World Kindness Movement's been around for 25 years now. They started out in Japan and then worked over from there. And there's, I think, 40-something member nations. And they hadn't been able to have a General Assembly since COVID. And so this was the 11th General Assembly. They had, invited people, you know, who are interested in speaking to. All of us had to submit a proposal, and then they decided who they were going to have based on the proposals that we sent in.
Excellent. So keep us posted. Maybe that's something, either listeners that are wanting to see the world and meet others all over the world, that'd be cool to check out. Now, you know, I think, what are some of the things for the future, you know, particularly for you as Captain Kindman, or for you and Kevin, or just things that you want the listeners to share? Like, where y'all thinking, like, man, you know, crystal ball, in 5 years, we will do this, or I will do this with this kindness movement?
Well, I'm really focusing hard on positive messaging, the positive messaging aspect of kindness. You call this positive filters, and I love that. You know, every time we interact with somebody, whether it's in speech or in words or in actions, we're sending a message. And everybody, you know, I don't want to make those blanket statements, but when you think about it, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of message do I want to send with my interactions? How do I want people to feel after they've talked with me, or after they've had the opportunity to be in my company? And so I'm preparing presentations for grade school, presentations for associations, presentations for corporations, to speak about the power of positive messaging and how embracing kindness behaviors and implementing my formula can make a big difference in fighting toxic cultures, creating positive cultures inside organizations, helping kids to want to be kinder to each other, to think about how they're interacting with each other, and hopefully inspiring the population in general on just thinking about how we're interacting and being able to overcome the divisiveness because and embrace the kindness that transcends the differences that we have.
Excellent. So we're going to go to my last segment. It's called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first, so I go first.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to go first. How did you get involved in the kindness movement at Mason University?
Oh, great. So we have a program at Mason called Mason Chooses Kindness, which started in, I believe, 21. At the height of COVID, we were just feeling some type of way. The university already has in existence initiatives about well-being, the Center for the Advancement of Well-being. And so they already did things like newsletters and programming strengths, all these different things. It's a full, office for quite some time. But during COVID or 21, they was like, we need to focus on kindness, bringing people across the campus together. And I've already been involved with the well-being stuff, Strengths Week. My mentor, Lewis Forrest, is the assistant dean of student life. And so with that, he had one of his offices that he was in, really intersecting with was well-being. So I was already involved in the office, but when he was like, Phil, we're doing this Mason Chooses Kindness committee. Would you want to be on it? Particularly the leadership committee. And what we want students, we want faculty and staff, we want everyone to come together and find ways to like kind of divide and conquer kindness. Like maybe someone will program World Kind. We have programming for Kindness Day, like you said. We wanted to build out our own Kindness Ambassador program. So we started that in 21. And I think it was like 30 people with a leadership committee of 5. And it's just been consistently that ever since, with some of the pillars, like the Pats for Patriots program that I'm doing, the Kindness Ambassador program. There's like World Kindness Day programming. Like we have different teams that contribute to it, but it's underneath the overall Center for the Advancement of Well-being. But it was coming out of a place of need. COVID really made people feel isolated, lonely, sad, racial unrest, what's going on in the news, a lot of things going on. And so it was just kind of across campus leaders that said we wanted to just do something to infuse kindness at George Mason. And I think it's grown. And we just actually had our retreat yesterday, and I'll send you our year in review. It's like a strategic plan and seeing like how we want to just be organized too, like not just come together and like I said, hold hands, like be intentional about, we're educators in higher ed. We like numbers and stats and data driven kindness. So
you want to be able to measure what you're doing, right?
Yeah, we want to do that. And like, for those out there, I mean, yes, like you were saying, endorphins, all that, but structurally and systemically, you can measure that. Like, people are happier, they stay. Your retention stays. Like, there's a really strong data strength for science. And so, yeah, Mason Chooses Kindness, and it's just been a way for me to be involved outside of my normal. I work in career services, but being able to be in part of this kindness committee has helped me meet new people across campus, interact with people I probably normally would not interact with in my functional role at Mason. It's just a good community. So shout out to that.
That's awesome.
Julia. All right. One question I have for you is, what is one recent act of kindness that you gave and received that you want to highlight? It could be small or big, but just one recent intentional act of kindness that you received and that you gave in recent times that you want to highlight.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a good friend of mine that is a sweetheart, and she is a cancer survivor, and she is the queen of eating healthy. And part of my effort this year, one of my big goals too, is to be kinder to myself, in the sense I need to lose a good bit of weight and take better care of myself physically. So that's a big part of it, because if I'm not taking care of my body and things the way I need to, I'm not taking care of my production capacity, I'm not going to be here to be able to give kindness away. So bless her heart, I reached out at spur of the moment. She talked with me for over an hour, giving me all these different pointers, things that you can eat, things that you can do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, how she, because she's feeling better than she's felt in years. And then on top of that, she went above and beyond. We get on the phone, and I figured it'd be like a 15-minute talk, and we talked over an hour. And then she sends me all these texts with links to a bunch of different stuff. And so that was I was on the receiving end of some tremendous kindness, and it's been very helpful. And then on the giving end, not to wax religious, but in my church, one of the things we do, we're assigned as what we call ministering brothers. We have specific other members of our congregation that we kind of keep an eye on, and we talk to them. We make sure that their families are doing okay, and that if there's anything that they need, that we can help out and things. And then there's one of the members of my church is he's in the hospital. He's in the ICU up at the University of Iowa, and he got taken from the nursing home where he's been and up there, and people haven't been didn't know where he got taken to. So I tracked him down, and then, was able to go up and see him yesterday and visit with him. And it's a small thing, but it was a big deal to him. And it was a big deal to me because, I don't know if he's going to make it. It was a tough thing to see him. He's been in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he's already lost a bunch of weight and other things. And so that being able to do that kindness, go up and see him and let him know that we love him, that we're thinking about him, that we're praying for him, and praying for the best. That was a blessing. So you got muted. You're muted again, Phil. Can't hear you.
I don't know. It's my Wi-Fi. Hello? Because I'm talking normal.
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
I don't know. It must be my Wi-Fi. But, it's very, very, very impactful because, one of the things I think about, what I shared about my kindness with my father-in-law is that, like, it also could be an uplifting and even very sad time. So a prayers to your friend, but also understand that, like, that also is like, it's not going to say healing because, it doesn't heal the person, but it also helps, it helps with the grieving, or just helps with, not say closure, but just make you, feel like that person really meant a lot to you. That's what I meant to say. Like it cements like being kind and just being present. And so maybe that I think to that point too, is like, sometimes you don't even have to say nothing, just going to see someone and being quiet. That is kind. So for those out there to think like, I don't know what to say, that's kind. Sometimes you don't have to talk. Just be there.
Being there. Sometimes you act of just simply being present.
Yes.
Kindness you can give. Yeah,
exactly. So that's where I was roundabout way of saying, like, sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Just say like, what do I say? Just being there or just listening. People appreciate that so much. Thank you so.
I was just going to say one quick thing. When my mother passed away, she couldn't talk. She was in a home before she passed away. I just went there and I sat there and just held her hand. That's all I could do. She couldn't talk. And then when she woke up enough to look over and smile, I was there to hold her hand. She smiled. That was it. But it was worth it.
Totally worth it. And I feel that.
Right.
Well, want to transition. This part is called shout outs and plugs. This is the opportunity for you to show love to anyone you want to show love, shout outs, and then plugs. These are the things that I'll put in the show notes, resources, things that you want, and I'm sorry for that, Randy, things that you want to elevate and share.
Well, okay. So say it again. It's plugs. And what was the first part?
Shout out, show love to anyone you want to show love to. And then plugs, plugs are things that you want the listeners to be aware of.
Golly, there's so many people I could give a shout out to. And shout out to Kevin Smith for being the amazing man he is with Kindness Worldwide, just going gangbusters. Shout out to my amazing partners, Dr. Elia Gorgoris and but Eldon Cahill, the director agent, Eldon Cahill. And shout out to a couple of friends of mine. They'll never, they're not on social media or other things like that, but they're going through their own challenges. My dear friend, Gary Orchard, I love him to death. He's been a friend of mine for over 50 years, and his beautiful wife and Melanie, want to shout out to them and let them know that, I'm thinking about you and I love you guys. I'm praying for you. And shout out to my dear friend, Lance Erickson, who's also been a friend for over 50 years. And just let them know, I care. I think about you. I love you guys. And as far as plugs go, be on the lookout. Kindness Factor International and Kindness Worldwide are doing great things together. There's some amazing things coming this year. And I've also got a book that I'll be releasing later this year, a book called Stephen's Ride. And it's a heart-wrenching, soul-touching, wonderful, funny, enjoyable story of brotherly love. And so that'll be coming out later this year. And, if you want to get some positive message and give some positive messaging, stop by the Kindness Hero Shop at www.kindnessheroshop.com. And, you got t-shirts, mugs, hoodies, hats, with all kinds of beautiful messages. They're simple, but pretty and beautiful designs with powerful little messages on them that when people see you, you will be giving positive messages to them, reminding them of the power and the importance of kindness.
Thank you so much, Randy, and thank you. And make sure we put all those things in the show notes. And I'm definitely going to have to contact Kevin about that ambassador program.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a dope opportunity, the way to elevate it and be a rep of that here at the George Mason community or either Northern Virginia area. Because I just loving what you're doing, love following you on LinkedIn, loving all the things that you're doing to elevate kindness, and appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you on your podcast. Positive Filter listeners, as you know, every episode is dedicated to the memory of my late father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. So please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund. Additionally, if you're a member of the Mason community, please consider submitting a Patch for Patriots. That's a program at George Mason that's very near and dear to my heart. So please follow the link and submit a pat to elevate someone else's day at George Mason. Thank you so much for listening to Positive Filter. Share this episode with a family member or friend, and have a great day.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.